Thank you for joining us. Just a treat to have you here, and appreciate flights coming into San Francisco. I'd love just to have you introduce yourself and the role at your company and how you're thinking about AI.
Well, let's start off with the easy question, right? So I guess I was tagged to go first. Matt Lyteson, CIO at IBM. And I think similar to what we saw in Aaron's opening charts, there's this everyday productivity AI. And so deploying that across the enterprise, helping out hour by hour, minute by minute, getting productivity for every single person and helping them to be happier in what they do and getting out of these mundane tasks. But I think more importantly, the value realization for us comes from how we're applying AI to every single one of our enterprise workflows as we transform the enterprise and, like you, becoming an AI-first operation.
Great, thanks, Matt. Annie.
Annie Baymiller, I'm CIO at Owens Corning. I think a similar approach to IBM. I have kind of three pillars of how we think about it. So first, we think about AI for everyone. So that can be accomplished in different ways based on kind of what your architecture tech stack is, but making sure that everybody has a chance to ideate and explore with how they can use a safe version of an LLM within the company to find hundreds and hundreds of use cases that I'll never know about, but finding productivity and sharing amongst their peers, which is great. Then we've got the center pillar, which we would say is really how do we use our big partners and platforms. You know, our companies like Box are going to be building faster than we're going to be building on the AI front. So as those are embedded into software that we use every day, how do we make sure we maximize that and get the most potential from it? And then the third is the areas where we have unique data, a unique idea, a competitive advantage, and we want to build and train ourselves with one of our partners. Those are obviously the shorter list because that's a heavier lift, but those are the areas where we think we can really do kind of a winning value proposition and switch that to really change the processes end to end.
Daniel Gourvich, I'm the president of Mercer Advisors, and I won't assume that people will know what Mercer Advisors is, not as famous as some of the other companies on stage. But we're an independent fiduciary financial advisor. And what that means is that we help families navigate their financial lives, which is probably the only thing that's more complicated than your Box folder structure. But our firm is a firm of fiduciary advisors who spend time with families, right? So we do two things. One is we help families, and second, and as importantly, we create the context for those advisors to do the best work of their career. And a lot of how we do that is by using technology, and AI is very much part of that now, in terms of making sure that they can spend as much time as possible with families, working on their problems, deploying judgment. And we like to think of Mercer as the Iron Woman or the Iron Man suit for a financial advisor, and AI is very much powering that, and we can talk about how we're doing that too.
Great, thank you for that. Annie, you were telling me that there was like fairs, right, where people come and talk about their AI and how they apply AI.
Yeah, picture your seventh grade science fair. We set up actual boards and tables, and we navigate through. We set it up for a couple hours, and it obviously can scale virtually too, but it's actually kind of fun to walk through and have people who came up with the idea demonstrating it. Not the person who necessarily in my organization, the IT organization, build it, but the person who was kind of bold enough to say, I think this is interesting enough to go build on. And they walk through, here's the problem statement, and then we walk through here technically how we accomplished it, and then here's how we're capturing value. And the goal of it is, one, to celebrate the folks that are being bold and coming up with these ideas for the enterprise. And second is, if it can help a light bulb go off for anybody else to say, oh, I have a similar problem, or I could do something like that, or I didn't know that was possible, the idea wheel starts to flow. So it's been fun. We're scaling it to some other locations outside of our headquarters, but it's been just a nice way to spotlight some of the initiatives.
It's interesting. We also take this approach where we try to celebrate folks who are coming up with AI ideas, and so we do it on Friday lunch. And so it feels like people are introducing their new best friend, which is like, here's the agent I built. Let me tell you what I can do with it. Great. Well, I'm curious to know how you're thinking about leveraging Box AI, Matt, and telling us kind of the today, here, and now, but maybe also the arc of what you're considering.
Sure. Well, I love these different ways of what Andy described and what you're describing of we've got to get everyone engaged. We've exited this era where it had to be people in the IT department just building stuff. And for those of us in IT, that can be a little bit anxiety-inducing at times, because we're like, what are all these new tools that people are coming up with? But at our organization, every year for really the past 3 years, we've done something called our Watson X Challenge, which is getting all of our employees using our tools and technologies before they get into the hands of our joint clients in many cases. And from that, we've kind of whittled down. So 170,000 people experimenting and building new use cases. I just got an interesting stat yesterday that says of the ones that we whittled down to about 100 use cases that kind of make it to the final round, they're actually going to be built. Like about 25 of those are asking for Box integration and Box AI integration.
Great.
Because
I didn't know that that's where he was going, so that's great.
Yes, it's fantastic. And not only that, I mean, some of the capabilities with Hub, we have something called Ask IBM. That is our internal, and I think a lot of organizations are doing this. How do I get knowledge about my company in a safe and secure way into their hands? And then we find out that there are pockets of information. So for our client zero stories, so that when we talk about our own use of technology and our partners' technology within our enterprise, we're using Box Hubs and Box AI on the back end of that to help curate that very specific content. So those are just a couple of the ways, but super exciting how this has progressed even within the past couple months to be able to do things like that.
That's fantastic. Great. Annie, how about you in terms of?
Yeah, I think similar on the being pleasantly surprised, I would say, with how quickly folks have adopted Box AI and the hubs. The hubs especially have been a really nice sweet spot for us in terms of how do these cohorts of folks that need to be looking at similar data start to curate that together, and then obviously the search on top of it is far more sophisticated. So I've been very excited by that, and I was excited by what we heard in the keynote, right? I think as we think about, we're at kind of an inflection point of we've been working with AI now for a year and a half, 2 years, the contemporary versions of AI, and I think we're at the place now where we're starting to look end-to-end at process reimagination and how do we really become AI first, and how do we really step back and say, if we have a chance to, as we look at these capabilities, rewire the company for the future, for growth and for productivity. The things that were shared today, I'm excited to see the agentic, the automation, and how you show that it all actually links together, I think is going to be really powerful. So I think we're just at the start of the fun.
It's a fun journey to go on together. How about you, Jenny?
Yeah, so the core of our AI strategy, and in many respects our technology strategy, is a system that we have, which is kind of an operating system that creates a canonical data model for everything we do in the company, right? So whether it's create a financial plan for a client, or file a tax return, or do an RMD distribution, big or small. And what that's done for us is create a framework for people to innovate around, right? And there's both, I would say, kind of corporate top-down innovation in the sense that we said about a year ago in partnership with Ben and Adam and others at Box, we said, we've been using Box for a long time to collaborate with clients, because the way that all of us engage with a financial system is through a set of meetings, transactions, and documents, right? If you open your mailbox, I'd suspect that half of any relevant mail you're getting is actually financial documents still, and the rest are coming into your email box. So clients have, for a long time, as their family office, we say, just send us all your stuff, give us your shoebox, and we'll deal with it. That's our job. And for a long time, those have gone into box folders, right? And we said kind of earlier this year, why can't we actually fully automate this process where a client drops the document in, we can recognize what the document is, file it, rename the document, extract the data, drop the data into the data model so that we can then provide advice on it. And that's now becoming real. So we have our financial planners and others, data extraction is something like 5 times faster than it was in July. I think we launched kind of at the beginning of September. And our financial planners are seeing 30 to 50% productivity gains like in the real world, which means they can serve more clients, spend more time on analysis, spend more time on judgment, and less time rekeying documents from statement from bank X or brokerage firm Y. But probably what's more exciting kind of goes back, Matt, to your point, which Ehsan, who's here somewhere, and our head of our tax team called me the other day, and we figured out how to solve the tax scoping problem. So what's the tax scoping problem, right? We not only kind of invest money for our clients, we also file their taxes, right? So when a new client shows up and the team wants to price the client, one thing that we need to do, because of all of our taxes have very different levels of complexity, is to actually look at their tax returns and scope what it'll cost us as part of our overall engagement, right? And historically, that's been a 2-week process. Get the tax returns. What they did, were able to sort of, with Box and with a bunch of other capabilities, essentially extract the data and in 5 minutes come back with a quote, right? So that fundamentally changes the sales process, right? When you can, as a salesperson, as a client development person, be able to understand what is it that you're dealing with here, and not have to go through 3 teams, scope it, have an approver, et cetera, right? So those kinds of things, the kind of bottom-up innovation that you guys are talking about, is probably more exciting to us even than what we're doing kind of across the company.
And Danny, you mentioned some of these impact metrics, and this is always like an interesting conversation, right? Because we want to make sure that really the focus is on innovation and creating new things, right? And so, getting that time back obviously means that hopefully it's more time with clients, all of that. And I'm curious, Annie and Matt, how you're thinking about impact, or whether it's just early days, or how you go about that.
You're going to pass to me first? Okay. So I think it's very interesting because, like a lot of organizations, when we started off on the journey, it was very easy to say, here's my use case, here's the hours saved, and you kind of go around, interview everyone, and you say, how happy are people using this, happiness up, yes, saving hours. And then our corporate CFO asked me, he's like, Matt, where are the real savings in this?
Yeah.
The corporate CFO didn't really like that answer. And so we devised this scheme, and basically, as part of our digital business operating model that is AI first, for every single one of our workflows, being able to center on what is the unit cost impact or what is the flow velocity impact, and in some cases both. Yeah. And so we've designed a whole systematic approach around that, so that once we baseline that workflow, as we're ingesting AI into every single part of that, you can see, is there an impact? What is the tangible ROI? How much is it costing me to run the ROI versus what it was, run that workflow with and without the AI? What's it cost to run the AI? And that inclusive of the entire technology stack. So that's helped us have a really objective way to be able to look these things, and then also be able to target where should we go next. Now that is independent then, yes, we still track hours saved and how happy people are when we're giving them the everyday productivity tools, because with AI we can't get out of that. But we found that those two things complementing each other really help us to have the robust, I'd say, objective, fact-based, scientific-based conversation with CFO and other senior executives who are really driving for those true productivity savings, at the same time that we're bringing our employees along the journey with us.
It's an interesting concept, flow velocity. Like, it's definitely something we're all looking at when we talk about workflows, so interesting. Annie, how about you?
Yeah, I think the qualitative piece is really interesting, right? From an employee engagement, retention point of view, as folks are using more AI in their personal lives, they're expecting as they come to work that those tools are available and those capabilities. And so there is a piece just around the ecosystem of applications that we can give to employees to be the best versions of themselves. And then with that comes more engagement, comes more productivity. So there is, I think, just a fundamental piece of this is the right thing to do for a variety of reasons. Now, I get the same questions around cost and return, but I think leveraging it really at what productivity improvements are we striving for, and how are we freeing up more time to do more high-value work with the same resources who no longer are doing some of the manual work or checking for accuracy or doing all of the summarization that they would have done in the past. So it's not a hard and fast metric by any means, kind of a collection of metrics, but I do think the employee engagement is an important one as we keep looking forward.
Well, I don't know if you're finding what we're finding when you're kind of looking at these both in complement, what is my impact to my workflow, and then how am I bringing the employees along, then you're able to focus your energy. Because I think a lot of organizations, I think ourselves included a couple years ago, were like, a little bit of peanut butter spread everywhere. And then you're like, where's the value in that? Because you can't get enough critical mass in one specific area. But you start looking at this in a multi-dimension fashion, like, okay, here's what, and I think you just gave the example, or we did customer support first.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
And we saw the impact there. And then we went on to this next area. And I think we and a lot of organizations are on a similar journey. But I think the more that you can try to focus your energy on those, then you can magnify the results and then use that. We were talking last night at dinner of we're using that to pay it forward then and reinvesting the savings into another area of the operation versus going back to the checking account and asking for more money.
And I think just to add on to your point around focus, and I think what I'm hoping to see, and it was good to hear it today, but is this ecosystem that can integrate and act together, right? Because we all have different tools we use, we all have different hubs for different things, and the ability for that to be more streamlined so folks are not bouncing in and out as much, but they're able to be effective with the agents doing what they need to do. I think that's going to be a total game changer, because right now I do think there is a productivity loss by needing to know where you need to be at certain points versus having a workflow and this kind of agentic end-to-end view, which I think will just add for a lot more productivity and focus.
Yeah, we started calling that the human user experience. I think back in the day, I think we all had sort of those teams that were like designing everything, how many clicks on a website, was it beautiful to look at, and things like that. That's fundamentally changed, and yeah, we've got this proliferation. So how do you bring all those together and a singular experience becomes increasingly important. And having the tech to integrate, which is why I'm happy to hear some of the integrations that Box has here today to make that ecosystem of tools even more streamlined and seamless for the human.
Terrific. So many folks here today are thinking about, okay, how do I start this AI first journey? And so what advice would you have in terms of what has to be kind of the first and second steps? Maybe what are some things that you learned after the fact that maybe you didn't get right at first? Just if you could share your wisdom as people are going forward on this journey.
Yeah. By far the most important thing was to understand the work we were doing. So the idea of having a data model associated with all of the things we do for clients allows us to then disaggregate those actions, those value delivery journeys into discrete tasks, and then to apply AI against them, right? The issue is that historically, and even for organizations that have spent a lot of time and money in process engineering, the data around the processes lives in many different places, right? So the important kind of underpinning for us has been really understanding the work. And then it turns out that there's lots of tools, right? And there's lots of ways to bring data into the work and bring that context. But what it's really kind of given us is the ability not only to then apply technology and AI specifically into discrete tasks, but also then to use the data to kick off work, right? So when a client sends us a document, when a client sends us an email, when a client says something in a meeting, having the inference model start to understand what have I agreed to, right, in this email, and with the human in the loop, start to make suggestions about, oh, it sounds like what we're talking about is A, B, C, you want to send a distribution to pay for college, and let's go set this up, right? And then you can click a button to say yes. You actually need to understand what's the work that you do as an organization in order to actually apply the technology and then to use the data from whatever you're generating in generative AI to actually then kick work off on the back end. And for us, that ended up being much easier said than done. And we're lucky in the sense of our organization only does one thing, right? We only have one product line, one service line, if you will. We work with families. They range from a few $100,000 to hundreds of millions of dollars, but we only do one thing. So I suspect that's much harder even in organizations that do many, many things. But it felt to us very much as the core.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I think if you're in early days, my number one piece of advice would be to create an environment that facilitates like widespread curiosity. And I would use environment in two ways. I'd say first, create a technical environment that is safe and secure and has all the guardrails around it, and the rules of the playing are known so that we can all sleep good at night knowing that the sandbox is safe. But also environment in terms of culturally. Create a space where you are celebrating and encouraging ideation in every corner of the company. I mean, our journey so far has been a groundswell of ideas. Now we're kind of shifting to, we're at this inflection point of saying, okay, let's look at end-to-end processes, let's look at agents. But we only got to that point because of the great ideas that already proved there's value, and because of now we have employees pushing us as opposed to us mandating. So I think that ability for people to tinker and learn really pushes you in a positive way from adoption, and you'll find ideas that you didn't even know were there.
Yeah, well said. So I'm hearing kind of here what we got: the data foundation, the workflow, the value, the human element, have a platform that's safe that you can build on. We're doing all those things as well. And of course, as any CIO would, I asked AI how I should answer this question. And I think the net is, and what I like is like AI is not just another tool. And I think keeping that in mind, where this is about the humans and the future of enterprises and the future of work. And with all these concepts here, how are we going to lead through this and really create the next version of what our world is going to be like with all this technology that can be used for good or that can be used for maybe not so good things. I think
big
it's
responsibility.
a big responsibility, right? With great technology comes a big responsibility or something like that. That's on all of us, all of you out there. So super excited.
Well, terrific. Thank you so much for the time today. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you so much.